Welcome to the finale for our Delta Green series, everyone. We hope you've been having a properly spooky month so far, and we're really glad you are spending a bit of that time here with us. But before we get to the discussion episode for this series, and of course, our fanfic, favorite part, here's what is coming up in the call to action after the show.
Yeah. We are going to have a final announcement about the Kickstarter for the Rebels of the Outlaw Wastes. A few notes on our recent migration over to the Megaphone platform and what it means for the format of the show going forward. A reminder of a new campaign beginning in the One Shot Network Secret Archive, as well as the normal patron thank yous and standard podcast send-offs, as we don't have any new reviews to dive into this week.
That's what I want for Christmas, dear listeners.
Reviews.
Definitely like some. Oh, actually, my birthday is next month, so for my birthday, if you were thinking, gosh, what could I get Amelia?
A review would be fantastic.
A review would be great. Stay tuned for all of that, as well as our series Outtakes after the credits. Until then, enjoy the show, everyone. Welcome back to our discussion episode. Last time, we finished our session 0 for Delta Green. This episode, we will be discussing the character creation process. We are excited to welcome back Justen Jess. Do you want to reintroduce yourself for everyone at home and tell us a little bit about the character you made in the last episode?
Hi, my name is Justen Jess. I am a pop culture writer and podcaster. If you want to listen to all my plugs, listen to the last couple episodes because frankly it takes too long.
We'll make you say them again at the end.
Yeah, just wait till the end. Trust me, they're not that interesting.
No, you have to. They're super interesting, and now you have to listen to the entire episode or you won't get to find out.
So last episode I made Mary Adler, a physician with Doctors Without Borders who is obsessed with protecting people and the truth.
Ryan, can you tell us about your character?
Absolutely. I made April O. Jacobs. April Jacobs is a TV news anchor for WNWZ, the local TV station somewhere in wherever North America. I don't remember. Is that like the east of the Mississippi or something like that?
You looked it up, and it is a station in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
It is. Yeah, it's technically a station in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, the dividing line for W and K is the Mississippi.
That's really interesting. So, yeah, we're west of the Mississippi.
Nope, we're east of the Mississippi.
Oh, no. All right, I lost everything. Is it a KNWZ? I don't know. Doesn't matter.
No, you said WNWZ.
Regardless.
I'm the one with memory loss here. Why?
It's fine. So April is a news anchor. She is 4'11" and wears a lot of yellow. just because
I hate you.
That was that,
and I hate that I get that reference.
I know that reference was literally just for Amelia. It's fine. But she is somebody that wants to uncover the truth, and hopefully we'll be able to get the scoop of a lifetime by joining Delta Green in their shenanigans.
Not gonna go well.
No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Amelia, can you tell us about your character?
Absolutely. My character is Illuminata M. Justice. She works at the Library of Congress in the Defense Research Division. She is a historian, translator, and researcher, and conspiracy theory enthusiast. She's also incredibly clumsy and always has a little bit of food on her shirt because she just can't get it in her mouth. It's just how it works sometimes.
Amazing. Well, let's go ahead and dive right into a segment we are calling D20 for your thoughts.
D20 for your thoughts?
So in this segment, we want to talk to our guests about their thoughts on the character creation process and how it relates to this system and others. But first, the most cliche question in RPG podcasting. Justin, please tell us how you got into RPGs and what brought you here.
So my first experience to like what we would consider like traditional RPGs, like outside of like Pokemon, was the Knights of the Old Republic video game for when I was playing it on the original Xbox, because it's based off of D20, and like I remember like you could look at the combat logs in it, and I found that very fascinating. And then when I was on a winter camp trip with my church, like somebody ran like an encounter in D&D 3.0, and then it was like this was in my head, but I didn't really even I didn't really find a group or anything for years. And then I found out that I liked storytelling and creating worlds and storytelling. So I think the first thing I ever ran was Rogue Trader, which is one of the Warhammer 40,000 RPGs that Fantasy Flight released that are, we'll call them interesting. They're not good. They're interesting. Right. But yeah, over the years, I started branching out, looking into more stuff, and I am where I am now, which is a miserable pile of RPG knowledge.
Welcome. Yep. Yeah, and none of it is like useful for,
I mean, part of it is like
being a great member of society, I guess.
Yeah, I know, but like I can tell you weird things about like, Dracula lore,
Right. My favorite is people will like say something, and then now after having done the Ennies for 2 years, I'm like, oh, I know a game for that. Do you want to like, oh, like I know a game about being like a traveling member in a punk band. If you want, I can give that to like, and people are like, no, thank you.
Come on, people.
Don't say I didn't offer.
Well, Justin, what do you look for in a system as far as character creation goes? Like, what sort of pieces need to be there for great characters to happen, in your opinion?
So as somebody who like the thing that I primarily look for in character creation is because I am somebody who's always going to be able to find a character in anything. Like, I'm somebody who's, if I like to fill in blanks and figure out if there isn't a character already present, I'll fill in the blanks for that. One of the things that really matters to me is to be able to figure out what a character does. Like, what are they going to be able to do in the narrative, and what are they functionally going to be able to do? I come from the first, I'd say like generation of games that I played didn't have very competent characters. And I am from I'd say I come from like a narrative school that I enjoy the leverage hyper competency porn, as John Rogers describes it, where it's like I like cool people doing cool stuff well. So I like to be able to like see what a character does, and how they're able to affect the narrative. That's always something for me. It's why I like PBTA games, because you're always going to have like, this is going to tell you, this is what you should be focusing on in your narrative. This should be what you're doing at and focusing on.
Yeah, it's very clear, like, what your role is.
Exactly, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'd say, like, Delta Green does that in a sense of, like, it tells you exactly what your job is. And, like, sure, you've got, like, hobbies that round out your character and stuff, but you especially in a game where you're like, oh, hey, you're going on missions.
Right.
You know, it's like, okay, this is what I'm good at and what I'm going to be able to provide to the team.
Mhm.
Yeah. We started to touch on this a little bit. But let's really talk about it. We like to look at the character sheets and talk about why they were designed that way and what it can tell us about the game just from looking at it before we really, you know, the character sheet is like sort of the first interaction you have with a game a lot of times. So what do you think these character sheets tell us about this game?
I think one of the best things that it does is it shifts you into the genre purposefully. Like the Delta Green character sheet, it looks like a form you'd get at the DMV almost. You know, it's a lot of blocky lines. There are big space, you know, there are spaces to write stuff. There's maybe one or two fields where you don't have enough space to write anything of worth, but you'd want to put something of worth there. So it's perfect. It's a government form.
It's perfect. Like, I love that it like asked like name, date of birth, like exactly like I would put, on my driver's license application.
Yeah, and there's like useless numbers and like they have like a what security clearance you need to view the character sheet on there. It's just random stuff like that. And in the very smallest watermark, it's printed on the character sheet. This is a work of fiction.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah, it's tiny, but it's like there. It's and like it and
I mean on the back too it says like DD United States Form 315. There's like a serial number at the bottom. Like they went for it.
There's even a crease where it's folded, where it's been folded.
Really?
On the first page, underneath the physical description, there is a slightly tilted line for like where it's been folded to be shoved in a file, and you can see it on the back sheet as well. And it's these things that, like, I think one of the things that Delta Green does exceptionally well in its art is its art execution and how much it makes the world feel lived in.
Yes,
and the character sheet is possibly the perfect example of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I noticed. I mean, that was the thing that I saw like when I looked at Impossible Landscapes too, which we haven't really talked about here. It's a supplement for the game. That it's just like the way it's laid out and like the way, and even the core book for this too, the way that like all of the photographs are like taped to the pages and like, you know, it just feels very like somebody handed you a file.
It takes that, like, Call of Cthulhu has like a long tradition of handouts of like, you know, giving very like stuff that looks old, because the base setting of Call of Cthulhu is the 1920s. And like, you know, giving people like either a picture of something, a letter, something to evoke, like something as a clue that's there to both evoke like, oh, hey, this is where we need to go next to the plot, or here's some spooky mystery, but also placing it directly as either something old or something in a period.
Yeah.
And everything, as you're saying, everything feels like it's part of a file, and like everything's taped in. Everything is the the art style is photorealistic to a point, except when there's anything supernatural going on.
Yeah,
it's interesting that the art style in the book is like it's got the photorealism, but like slightly painted feel to it. Right. Which is kind of cool. It's always like one of the things that Delta Green always does like aces is the art execution for it. It's got a style and it executes that to the max. Absolutely.
Yeah, I really love this character sheet. Like, it's so good.
Yeah, and it seems to flow well too for when we would use like weapons and stuff. You go to that second page, and then when you're like looking at your stats and skills, you go to the first page, and It's an interesting flow, and it felt easy enough to follow along, like what I had to do next for character creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know one thing that I always look at too at the sheets is like, as I'm doing character creation, was there any moment where I wasn't sure where to put something, where the book was like, here's the next step, and I was like, where do I write that down?
Yeah.
So I guess in that way it doesn't feel like a government form, but in a practical RPG way, it was great.
Yeah.
As a player, I loved it.
It wants you to evoke the feeling, but not the experience of filling out a government form.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where the real horror is, actually, is that you have to.
It's funny too, because like every section has a number before it. So 14 wounds and ailments, 16 A through G is your weapons. So instead of just like section 16, here's your weapon list, it's
please refer to section
16B.
16A.
Yeah, I'm going to be using 16C for this, I believe. That's your shotgun.
Oh, so great.
Yeah, so great. It's pretty cool. I like it. So how do we think character creation in Delta Green stacks up to other systems that we've played, especially like any other cosmic horror games out there?
You all have done base Call of Cthulhu, right? Just out.
We have.
Yeah. Okay.
We did last October.
Yeah. Yep. Which, there's a lot more math to do in base Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
And it's all based on like 2 stats, which is, I'm going to say, not my favorite. It's like, the only things that matter are your education and intelligence, really. Don't love it. It's like they're coming from the same tree, but like Call of Cthulhu has like even its most recent editions where it is like there is an honest intent to try to make the game more accessible. It's still Call of Cthulhu. Yeah, it's still Call of Cthulhu. It is still 30 years old and still has all of these legacy components that are still there.
Yeah. I really liked that this felt like they made it simple for me. There are a lot of numbers, you know, in dealing with all of these percentages and stuff. But instead of being like, here's all the skills, choose 10, they were like, why don't you pick a category and then we'll tell you what those are. Which for my sort of analysis paralysis brain, that was great. It was like, we'll break it down for you.
Yeah, I do like the archetypes that they had here for your different characters that you could choose from. I mean, it seemed to have a wide array of character types that you could choose, which was great. And even like super special, like media specialist, I guess you wouldn't think of that as like a character type to just create from scratch, but like, you know, now it's there. And I saw firefighter was in there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think that like, this is another thing that you would talk to your GM about, obviously, but like, if you were in a position where you had a specific idea for a character and like the book is like, here's your skills. And you were like, can I pick something out? Like there, you know, as always, you can have those conversations because I do know that like getting a skill package sometimes feels restrictive when you have an idea in mind. But I like not having to pick out skills or like look up what everything is and be like, is this the thing that matches the profession I want to do? They're like, here you go.
Yeah, there is. I think like the bonus packages help with that, like letting you shape the character a little bit more. And and at least a lot of the professional packages give you options of like, here's the stuff that you're going to be like, that you're going to need if you're this job, but there's at least like some flexibility within there.
Right. Definitely. What do you think as far as cosmic horror? How this handles that kind of genre and that kind of feeling?
I think what it does is I don't think it's like the horror isn't in making your character. It is it's in using it. Unless you are deciding to do it with one of the veteran options, then there isn't like that cosmic horror isn't really making its appearance in it. But when you are trying to figure out what your motivations are and why you're doing this, I think that's an important thing to examine over, like, your character has not received any, they're doing this volunteer work, and they've decided to become a member of Delta Green. Why are they doing this? I think it's a good opener to the genre.
Yeah.
Of why are you choosing to confront these horrors?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, when we did Call of Cthulhu, there wasn't a lot of question of why do you care about horror stuff? What, it was I was sure to pick skills that would be helpful, but I don't really remember having a lot of discussion about the horror.
Yeah, because it feels like in a Call of Cthulhu, it's you are these normal people. You've got normal life stuff that you have as a character. You build that all into character creation. And the game itself is horror happens at you.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel didn't I run a speakeasy? Wasn't that?
Yeah.
And you were pretending to be your twin.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And and it was sure, some of it was a little extra dramatic and stuff.
Right.
But it had nothing to do with cosmic horror. And it felt like in Call of Cthulhu, it's you're just going about your business and then boom, cosmic horror happens at you. Whereas it feels like this game, you're signing up for cosmic horror.
Yeah. In Call of Cthulhu, you are victims. You are victims who are not who are going to be exposed to this thing. In Delta Green, you're the first response team.
Yeah.
Which creates a different feel, but it asks those questions because I mentioned this earlier, but Delta Green came from the idea of why do you go into the haunted house? And and wanted to give a framework to, especially in the modern day, why would you do that? Why would characters do that? And I think a lot of the personality questions and the stuff you're looking at with motivation and some of the questions that are asked in the character creation steps in the latter parts are asking about why are you doing this? What keeps you going? And I think that is it's a very good thing to solidify the genre in that regard, to remind you that you're not a victim, you are acting against the unnatural.
I think it also gives you a lot more connection to playing that character because, I can feel connections to the characters that I've made and then throw them into a game and be this has nothing to do with what I made. But this one sort of forces you to buy into the concept of the game from go, because you have to say, all right, why am I doing this? Why am I here at all?
Yeah, it assumes that you want to be part of this instead of okay, make this character and now, do they want to be a part of this? The answer can be no. And here the answer was yes. You're part of this. No.
I think, and I get frustrated about that in a lot of games because I always say, I'm if I am sitting in a tavern and some dude with a sword comes in is come on, maybe it's being a woman, but I am not leaving with a man with a sword from a bar.
Yeah.
Right.
It's never going to happen. The answer is no. So that's already a big assumption.
I think there is a two-sided agreement that needs to be made of that the game framework needs to give you a good reason to go on this, and that you need to have a character who is willing to engage with it.
Right.
There's a joke in the in Delta Green fan stuff I've read where somebody will say well, my agent wouldn't want to go on that mission, and it's okay, yeah, it's a volunteer organization. Make a character who would.
Yeah.
Because there's probably somebody in a file somewhere that's going to go into that. The framework is pretty easy to determine why a character would go in there, But I think that is, personally, I'm of the opinion that you need to have a good hook, both in a story wise and within the party, for why people are working together. Because I love character drama, but I hate premise rejection.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is, where it's like, I don't want to go on the adventure. And I'm like, then why are we playing the game?
Right.
Right. And that makes sense. I think like making a character for this type of game, we created a journalist, a doctor, and a historian. So it would make sense that the GM would be like, all right, well, what would those three professions go on? What sort of mission can I send them on? Not like, well, you're three regular people that don't know how to use firearms too well. We're going to send you in the middle of a war zone with Cthulhu's like minions. Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Like if I was taking these three characters and running them, I'd be like something like, okay, maybe there's been a weird outbreak somewhere that is showing unusual mutations in its victims, or there's something related to, like, you know, oh, hey, there's a weird ancient virus that's popped back up or something. And you know, that's like something I could see them going on. You know, I think that's a strength of the system, is that not every there is a lot of investigation and talking and looking into clues as part of this game, and it doesn't need to end with, or the end all be all of player functionality is not pointing a gun at something and pulling the trigger until its hit points hit 0.
Yeah, exactly.
And it also seems like the answer is not always like, well, someone summoned Cthulhu. Like there are other things going on that's like, well, we don't know like where this virus came from, but it is potentially something supernatural. But the like mission itself is not kill the giant supernatural being.
Yeah.
Like
there's
more happening.
There's a free supplement, which is sort of like the beginner's box for the game, and it has a sample adventure, and the adventure is just a Delta Green agent died, and you have to go clean up his house. And you just have to go clean it up, secure anything, and remove any trace of the unnatural. And it's it sounds really, and it's really simple on the tin, but it's a really good, at least premise of like, you know, this can start from really anywhere.
Right.
Absolutely.
I love that. How do you think going through the process of character creation in this game reinforces the feel of the game? How does it give you a sense of what's going to happen?
Because I think that you're making like semi well-adjusted adults to go send them to the slaughter. I think that like it's really in that back half of like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing it? Like, and what have you been exposed to before? Maybe even. Like that's getting you like saying, okay, what has been the past experience with this and preparing you for it. But it's also like that part where you're picking your job and stuff. I'd say, okay, what are you planning to do with this character, and sort of what are you expecting?
Yeah, I can see like as at least as a group creating the characters, the different types of characters that you create as a group are going to determine kind of what sort of stories you're going to be able to play. Because you know you're working for an organization, and that's going to be sending out agents based on their talents, right? So it would make sense where they go. And that kind of gives me a little bit of an expectation of what sort of things we're going to be doing as a group. But it's also like you don't really get a sense of what the game's about until that last few questions, right?
Yeah. I feel like when you get to the motivations, that really like why on earth would you do this? You know, like, you might die. It's very clear that you're going to go crazy. Like, what? Why? Why?
I think that like maybe that's sort of like a realistic depiction of Delta Green, of like everything is normal until you dive off the cliff. But at the same time, I don't think that's the best way of preparing people.
No.
Yeah. Just fair.
So what do you think then is one of the biggest flaws of character creation in this system? And what do you think is one of your best parts about it?
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of deep percentile systems, but one of those things is also like, I am a core mechanic is not the end all be all of my stuff. Like, I'll play a D20 game. It doesn't matter, like, if there's an interesting thing going on there. I think that, the isolation of, like, character creation from the supernatural elements until really the end of it, like, it doesn't really, there isn't really a sense of what player expectations should be. Like, which I think is part of just, like, I think it's a little bit of a product of its like design lineage, where it's not quite trying to reinforce genre and expectations through character creation, but instead making a wholesale human being who is then going to have things done to them.
Yeah, it doesn't give me a good sense of, like, what's, like, optimal, right?
Yeah.
For like my character type or whatever, aside from here's the skills that you're good at. Now pick 8 new skills that you're also semi good at. And then, like, well, what do I pick? I picked swimming for one of my skills, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, swimming's useful, right? And 20% seems kind of low if you're going to need to roll to swim. So maybe, but, like, I have no idea.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, like, I didn't talk about this at all during character creation, but this is one of those games where unless you are doing something challenged or in, like, a time-sensitive manner or where there's a degree of difficulty, you're never really rolling.
Okay.
Like, any skill that you could sort of quantify as, like, a knowledge skill, you can basically use anything as a knowledge skill in Delta Green. Like, I could use firearms as a knowledge skill to, like, identify, like, oh, hey, this round is like, these rounds are only made in Germany, for example. It's like, if I have, like, a certain level of proficiency in it, or, as my doctor has, like, a 50 in pharmacy, I'm going to be like, yeah, I know what this drug does off the top of my head.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, there's, like, that assumed competency from doing stuff. But, like, having a 20 in swim, what does that mean?
Right.
Which I think is a default and a fault of most percentile-based systems.
Yeah.
Yeah,
do I start as 50% average? Like, people,
right.
like, eh?
I mean, if you didn't
like,
know about that, 50% swimming, it's like, well, 50% of the time I'm just going to drown? Like,
right.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem fair. Just keep me away from the water. Now we're getting into, like, old video game territory where you fall in the water and you're dead because they don't have the mechanics to actually get out of the water.
Yep. No, I mean, it's like, to some degree, I like, so it's just really, do I want to know what I'm getting into going into it? Like, I feel like for me, part of the fun of horror is, like,
not knowing what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. And I think this is where, like, we, an important part of horror games, especially, is a healthy session zero where you're talking about expectations and managing those, as well as, I'm normally with Delta Green, I'm running a one shot because, it's fast, it's quick. I'm working off, like, a 500-page pre-written scenario or a 500-word pre-written scenario. And, it's a matter of, hey, what are some subjects that are, not, that are off the table, stuff like that. But, like, I'll usually give, like, a 2 or 3 minute spiel about what to expect from Delta Green, sort of the rule, not the rules, but, like, the fictional expectations of the universe. Like, oh, hey, it's not a James Bond setting, it's a Jason Bourne setting. And even then, it's even lower than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think expectations are key for any game, but especially for a horror game, and especially for a horror game with any level of lethality.
Yeah,
exactly.
Setting that up for people is important. And I don't think the game does that itself. But
yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, hey, 0 doesn't mean you're unconscious. 0 means you were dead. Like 2 means you're unconscious, you're down. And that's before we even get into stuff like there are lethality rules for stuff like automatic weapons and grenades, which can are a simple if you roll under a flat number and you do not have any mitigating factors, a character is dead. Which is it's a brutality that is not present in many modern games. And so it's it's something that I'm always if somebody's character sheet has a submachine gun on it, I'm gonna say hey, this is how lethality works real quick. Not usually a huge problem, but it's a game that tries to represent the fact that a single gunshot can kill you. Not always, but it has that potential.
And I think that's something that I have played with a lot of people who would not be okay with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Something so simple can kill you. They'd be like, no, it's not
Yeah.
So,
and
you need to be aware.
And to loop back on our sanity conversation, the stuff there is a certain expectation in RPGs that I can do violence without having to really think about it. And especially if it is justified within the character's head. And I don't want to go into the whole spiel of it, but the idea of being in a firefight is at least a stressful situation. Is
why don't we talk about that more in game?
Yeah, I mean,
I know because some of it is just a power fantasy kind of a thing, but I do think there are more games where it's do we want to talk about that? What I think about that with the unmasking and L5R too, that it's this is just stressful. It's okay to have a little bit of a meltdown because I've never seen a ghost before. That would mess me up. I like when there's mechanics for that.
I think there's I'm actually a big fan of stress mechanics. I'm a big fan of masks and conditions and blowing off conditions through fulfilling narrative function, through fulfilling narrative requirements and playing into genre is something that I love. And it's not something I need in every game, but more. But I'm somebody who likes to get into a dramatic space. It's I'm a theater kid. I like to do that. And
it's it lets you tell more complex stories too.
Yeah.
Which, again, I know is not for everybody. Some people are I just want to hit it with a sword.
Or some people don't even want rules to deal with. Some people are very particular about, I don't want a rule to tell me how I feel. Which, I respect that. I trust that game designers usually know what they're doing. And so it's if there's a rule telling me how to feel, or a rule telling me how my character's stress or reactions can be affected, I'll play into that. Sure, it's a game.
I think it also indicates to you that this is a thing that is important to the genre and a thing that should come up in your game. Whether you choose to actively use those rules or not, it does mean that the designer has said this is something that should come up. And I think that alone is important too.
Right.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part?
Favorite part of building characters in this game? Honestly, I especially when I'm looking through the list of various agencies and finding weird stuff to make characters around, because as somebody who is mostly running the game, it's why would this character ever get called into an operation? And I love that feeling. But also trying to figure out weird people who are I've worked several jobs. I know that there are weird people who end up there. I think that something that I'm dodging around is also that there's a lot of potential to be cops in this game, and while that's not very interesting to me, they exist, and creating characters within that framework of why are they here, why do they care about this specific thing, is interesting to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do really like the exploration of how did you end up in this job? Like, because I think that even about myself, it's like, if you had asked me, you know, whatever, like 15 years ago, what I would be doing for a living, like, this is not it.
Right.
That's fine. I like what I do, but like not where I thought I would end up. And so I do like exploring, you know, what weird set of circumstances and skills got you here.
There's an additional book that just like talks about a bunch of agencies and stuff, and like there's a profile like there was for like Doctor for like playing an IRS analyst.
Oh,
because it's like, so hey, much. Evil cults or corporations that are using the unnatural still have to like do accounting.
Right. And are they pretending to be a church so they can be tax-free? Because I'm not about that. Yeah. Okay. The part we've all been waiting for. Our favorite part of the show. Fanfic.
Fan fiction.
Heck yeah.
What is this group of characters doing? Like, what are we doing?
I mean, I as like as the person who's run this, like I would say like we are probably going to like some Delta Green analyst has like in a cubicle in Washington D.C. somewhere has like tagged like, oh hey, there's this weird outbreak of stuff that is correlating with some search terms that are in like a historical database somewhere, like, you know, to go into like the thing that maybe something like from like Roanoke or something, you know, because horror plots know like 3 catastrophes
For sure.
in history. And you know,
I was thinking too, I'm like, what if it is like just like this weird strain of like the bubonic plague?
Yeah.
Like we've never said, like we thought that was gone. This looks like that, but it's doing weird stuff.
Yeah. And maybe there's a relation to like the deep ones or ghouls. You know, it could be a number of things. Like, and there's always the thing of the mythos of you can make something up. It just fits within a certain genre. And like, you know, it would probably be like, oh, hey, we're, you know, all 3 of us get like some sort of email or random call, like, you know, it's like, oh hey, you've been invited to a business conference, and then you get a tale, and we all end up and we're in some like small office or motel in the middle of nowhere, and some guy in a suit gives us a file. Like that's how I imagine it happens. That's how most Delta Green operations start.
Yep. I want to know how Ryan is here. Like, I feel like like I have a specialty in conspiracy theories and like history, and we have a doctor. Why is this local newscaster who is threatening to uncover every story invited into this secret organization?
I put down like, why does Delta Green trust your agent and keep trust your agent to confront the threats and keep it secret is my journalistic integrity. Like, even though like I want to uncover the truth, I've still got like a very like core set of like ways that I go about my work, and like I never give up a source. I do things by the book, and when I give my word, that's my word, and it never falters, sort of thing, right?
You're an adorably ethical journalist.
Yeah. Right?
I mean, you've probably been read into some stuff that is beyond eyes only clearances.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I mean, that's interesting.
I wonder if I'm brought on to kind of document it, right? To document all of this for Delta Green's eyes specifically and only.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, one of the things that's very interesting about Delta Green is that just about any approach you could take to the unnatural, you can find some character or faction within there to support it. Like the most hardline traditional stance of Delta Green is burn everything, and don't recover alien technology because it's going to be always hazardous. But then there are people who like, we need to study what we need to prevent the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And so like documentation is maybe something of like, hey, we can at least use these keywords and searches and stuff so that we can prevent other stuff. So that's definitely interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I also love the idea of you being the person that makes all their training videos.
Right.
I'm very into that.
Because like I'm very personable, right? April's like this like really extremely personable individual, like even though they're like, you know, at the very least local famous.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're very approachable and like somebody that you want to have a conversation with. And so like kind of being the face of these like internal Delta Green training videos is kind of hilarious.
Yeah. And like you're like, and being a journalist means you're a good investigator, which means that you're going to be able to like, you can get into places, and a journalist asking questions will elicit a different response than an FBI agent or a U.S. Marshal asking questions.
Definitely.
Very true.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially like if people are like freaked out and worried about something, they're much more likely to go to like a journalist and be like, I need to tell the story because people need to know. And you're like, great.
Or
I will
even
not tell them.
Yeah, even going to people and saying, you know, I'm a journalist, I've got integrity. You can be a completely anonymous source. Like the general public know about journalistic integrity and know that like, hey, if I say I don't want to be named or mentioned, then I know it's going to be an anonymous source and nobody's going to give me up on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like,
Definitely.
you know, if you got somebody that's trustworthy, asking the questions, then, you know, people are going to be more likely to tell you the truth.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You just have like a trustworthy face,
Yeah.
you know? Like, you just seem like somebody that I can get along with.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Just pick her up and put her on your shoulder and have somebody.
She's small.
Yeah, just super small.
Super small. Pocket size. Okay, let's get into our discussion on advancement and take it up a level.
Take it up a level. Take it up a level.
So in this segment, we talk about character advancement and also character growth.
Mm-hmm.
So how does a character level up in Delta Green, and how does that character change mechanically when it happens?
So there, it is a non-leveling system. There's no experience points that are gained in the system. If you look on the character sheet, you'll notice that there are tick boxes next to every skill. If you attempt a skill and you have a non-zero value in it, even if it's the base value that's like the standard value that's in brackets, and you fail it, you just check the box. At the end of every session, you clear all your boxes and you add 1 to the skill of any skill that you checked a box for. It's you just like when you try something and fail, you get better at it. That's like sort of the most common way. There's also character growth. Though growth is a very open-ended term, because after you finish a investigation and you're done, you go home. And between sessions, you have sort of interstitial scenes at home where you basically clear off the deck. So if you had bonds that were damaged or broken during the investigation, you might have to spend your home scene trying to repair those bonds. Alternatively, you might be going to the hospital to recover hit points if you were badly hurt. One of the other options is not hilariously, but like it's a game. It's not an option in many games, or at least as a mechanical option. You can go to therapy.
Love it,
because this is a game that is about trauma, and you can talk to your therapist about the fact that you had a very rough investigation where you dealt with things that that humanity is not supposed to know. The big tipping point for that is, are you honest with your therapist about what you saw? Because if you lie, your therapist can tell you're lying to them, and maybe it's not as effective. And if you tell them the truth, you've just created a new vector for the unnatural. And you've put that person in danger.
Also, it feels like they're more likely to commit you.
Yeah.
Right?
Why wouldn't Delta Green have therapists on hand specifically for
because Delta Green is not part of it is that Delta Green is not really the secret is that even if it's the government sanctioned program and not just this ragtag group of outlaws, is that it's a much smaller organization than anyone is led to believe. It's just a bunch of analysts and case officers with a limited budget.
Oh, no.
That is stealing from other departments and creating joint task forces out of it. Like, there is no actual Delta Green. There are very few actual Delta Green employees. It's all stolen from other departments to cover its tracks.
Oh, wow.
Which is how at least some black budget organizations work. I
just feel like if I told my therapist that, like, I saw Cthulhu, she'd be like, are you manic right now? Are you, like, we would start getting questions about, like, how are you sleeping? Are you eating right now?
Yeah, it's like you can, like, there's, like, literally in the home section, it is, like, if you're telling the truth, you risk causing sanity loss to your therapist. And if your therapist thinks that you're a danger to someone, she can, like, they might call the authorities. Which is like, it makes this whole thing. There are other things you can also do when you're in your home scene, which includes stuff like, you can try to, like, train a skill while you're there. Or you can even, like, stay studying the case, like maybe you stole some files and took them home. Or you're trying to, like, you've got, like, this encrypted flash drive with a bunch of rituals on it. You're trying to study those. Which, are all various ways that the character can grow. Like, hey, I want to raise that unnatural stat because I want to know more about the supernatural and the things that are out there. Other ways characters can grow is they can get fired or prosecuted. Like, you might have, maybe because you needed to get weapon, like maybe you needed to take down some monster, you stole weapons from lockup. And, like, like, there's entire things for, like, doing things that trigger an internal investigation. And
I love how much just, like, straight up bureaucracy this game has, which, like, I feel like really lends to the horror element.
Absolutely.
Also.
Like, there's a specific horror that comes from everything having a rule and the massive inertia of government.
Right. And I think there's something to be said for, like, I as a character am like, I gotta do something now, like, I need this handled, and somebody being like, but you do submit that form in triplicate, and being like, like, there's a sense of urgency on something, and the government being like, we'll get back to you in 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah. And of course, the thing of you can't tell people what you're doing, really. Like, you've always got a cover story. And if that cover story ends in gunfire, how will you be able to clean it up? Because, and so there's all these things going to happen to fall out. And, if I'm running a one shot, I can, like, sort of, like, summarize something that might happen. Maybe, depending on the mood of the session, give it a happy or sad ending. But, like, in an ongoing game, it's very possible that, like, you, like, your investigation caught the local sheriff who's maybe called your supervisor and is like, hey, this person is da-da-da-da. And it's like, really? I thought they were supposed to be in Massachusetts for a conference. And it's like, stuff goes on there. So, like, there's this whole other section of it, of things that can happen in the aftermath that all sort of count as character growth. It's just not always the character growth you want.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting because I'm, like, looking through some of these things in the home section and, like, stay on the case, where you kind of try to come to terms with what happened in the case. you roll a d6 -3 to add to your sanity,
which can
be negative.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. So either you come to terms with it and like you get some reprieve, that some of that emotional stress goes away, or you are just over obsessing and you lose some of that. You get more stressed out because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really like, I think one of the things the game does incredibly well is show, like, even though you are doing something that is, I would say, like, objectively good, which is trying to at least delay the apocalypse by a week, is that it is incredibly taxing, and you never get any, like, that's the thing of, like, unlike other games, there's no rewards at the end of the mission. Like, there's no gold coins, there's no magic armor. It's that there's, dead bodies to clean up, and a lot of paperwork to do, and probably like
emotional trauma.
Immense emotional trauma. It is a bunch of broken people trying to save the world and making bad decisions, which is very interesting, and it's why I find this game so intriguing, even if it is like, like I said, it's a problematic phase. There's easy ways you can take this game into places that are probably like uncomfortable or unhealthy. But I think like with a good group, I joked about this earlier, whale graffiti can happen. Like you can take it from there, or you can do stuff that is like, end of the world stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Or ramp it up.
Yeah.
Start off like super weird and basic and get extremely cosmic with it over time.
Yeah. I mean, I think as long as you are having those conversations at the beginning about what people are okay with, what the expectations are, your lines, your fails, like all of that kind of stuff, I think there's a lot of potential here to have like a really good, meaningful game. And I like that it can be serious. I love serious games. There aren't enough of them. But I like games that deal with like a lot of that emotional stuff. It's something that I really love. And I feel like this does that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's the only game where I found a party wipe satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I can also
as a player.
Okay. I can easily see this working as kind of like a almost an entourage of different characters that you can pick from, right? That okay, we're only 3 players, but I've got 6 different characters to choose from, and depending on what characters you're choosing to play together, that's the type of missions you're going to go on.
Yeah.
Which would be really cool.
Yeah, it's a fun way that you can sort of like play with the idea of like shifting characters or stuff of like, okay, shifting genre or expectations even based on the characters you're doing there. Because it's like our group is going to look a lot different from like an FBI agent, a CIA analyst, and an Army Ranger.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. I could also even see like 2 sessions happening simultaneously. Like one group you're playing like the down in the ditches with the weapons and everything, and the other group's like trying to investigate, and they're kind of trying to converge to a single point of the story. There
is a scenario, I think it's called the Star Chamber, which is an official scenario written for it. You play two groups of characters. One is your agents who are presiding over an inquiry of other Delta Green agents, and and what happens is that everybody else gets assigned a second character, so you play that character in flashbacks. And,
interesting.
And like even like the character stats change based on who is narrating at that point.
It's so cool.
One of the things that I truly love about this game is like it's really fascinating what people come up with in terms of like narrative structures and stuff. There's a contest that gets held every year called shotgun scenarios, which are Delta Green scenarios that have a 500 word count limit, I believe. And they're just like, they're fun to read and stuff. There's one that is about, it's called The Button, which the idea of it is that through happenstance, a programming student finds a circuit that is mythos related, that they build a little tube with a light and a button, and the light will always light up a second before you press the button. And the entire frame of this is that you cannot avoid this. This is how it happens. If the light goes on, you're going to press the button. And like, if you say like, I'm going to wait for it to light up, but I'm not going to press the button, it'll never light up. And it's like going with the cosmic horror stuff of like, there is no free will. There's no free will. It's all, it's all predetermined. It's like stuff like that. It's just like, this is weird. And like, if you keep playing with it, you keep feeding sanity into it. It's just like, there's so much, it's really the thing that keeps me interested in this game, even like as like where Call of Cthulhu doesn't, of like, that people find all this weird stuff and like there's stuff based on like, like modern day cults, venture capital. Like there's even like a group of bad guys in one of the books that poses a fertility clinic. And it's all just like stuff of like capturing like stuff out there in the news and twisting, which I find just really fascinating. And it's a weird game. It's a problem. It's not a perfect game, but it's an interesting one.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I just love the like varying scale that you can play this at, that it's just like, sometimes it's just like, this stuff is like weird. Like, it's a weird fit, something that you would read in some like weird Twitter thread or something that you're like, that's strange. And then it's like, oh no, there's like so much more to it. But also it can be the end of the world. And the game handles all of that really well, that it scales that way, that not a lot of games do that.
The sort of simplicity of like characters and the system itself sort of does give you this open-ended structure of like, you're going to just slot these characters in. It's up to the storyteller and the players, up to the characters and the storyteller to figure out how big this is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, well, that was so good. Justen, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Delta Green.
It was my immense pleasure.
Can you remind everyone where they can find you online? And here's where you can plug all those sorts of things that you've been working on.
All right. Yeah. So I do the Compleat Discography podcast, which is a Terry Pratchett Discworld read-through show that occasionally dips into other fantasy, like The Locked Tomb. You can find that at @twin_pod. I also do the Babylon Podject, which originally did Babylon 5 and is now doing a watch through a person of interest. Secretly the best cyberpunk show of the 21st century. And that is at Babylon Podject. You can also find me on Gatecrashers, which is gatecrashers.fan, where I do writing about comics, television, wrestling, and whatever they let me do. Honestly, they give me too long a leash. And you can also find me on Twitter at Justen Writes. That's JUSTEN, where I have ADHD about whatever I'm hyper focusing on at the time. Enjoy.
Oh, there you go.
Look, we love a good ADHD tweet.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just have thoughts about things and I just need people to know. Is it relevant? No. But if I shout it into the void, it cannot be in my brain. And that's good. Thanks, Twitter. Well, thank you again for sitting down with us to do this. And thank you to everyone for tuning in.
Call to action.
Yeah, like that. I'm really excited that we finally got to cover Delta Green. I know it's been on our list for a long time. I know that we covered Call of Cthulhu last year, and this obviously does have a lot of similarities. But I do really like that we got to cover kind of like this more modern version.
Yeah.
And I like that we got to dig into some of the, like, to dig into the sanity mechanics. And, you know, in this most recent episode, we got to kind of talk about some of the fan space stuff around this game, which was also really cool.
I think if we look back on our like documents of games we want to cover and people that suggested things to cover, this might have gone back ages for when Justin first suggested, yeah, I can do Delta Green with you guys.
I think, I feel like they suggested it pretty early on, and certainly like they were always the person that I wanted to go to for this. So I'm really excited that we finally got to do this one.
Absolutely. It was really
again,
great.
in our spooky month. So
I know. I'm really excited. I've got ideas for next year's spooky month. It's fun covering spooky games in October. It's a nice little tradition that we got started.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I was like, I would really love to do another kind of Christmassy winter game in December too. So if somebody has a game that they've written and they would like to cover or that they know of, let us know, because I kind of like doing these little seasonal games.
Especially if we can cover something that has some more unique mechanics and stuff like that. I think that'll make it a lot more worthwhile as well. So
yeah, definitely.
We'll definitely keep an eye out for things and see what happens. Absolutely.
Well, before we let you go for our end of the month break, we do have some announcements and calls to action. First, a quick reminder that the Kickstarter for Rebels of the Outlaw Waste is still going on for about another 2-ish weeks around the release of this episode. I didn't want to do the exact math. So 2-ish weeks. They've already met their funding goal and their first stretch goal, but they have several more waiting. Most of them are for additional custom worlds for the game, and those would be so awesome to see. I would be really excited to see what kind of stuff they have going there.
Absolutely.
So we will put a link to that in our newly streamlined show notes. If you want to hear more about that game, you can check out our most recent Spotlight episode too. We had a lot of fun with the system. Yeah,
it was so much fun. Speaking of newly streamlined, next up, a few notes about our move to Megaphone for the One Shot Network. Now, for those that know, we used to be on Simplecast, and then the network decided to move things to Megaphone for a number of reasons. So we'll get into a little bit of what that means right now and what that means going forward. So just a quick note that this is a little bit longer than our usual call to action, but we just kind of want to explain to everybody what's going to keep you in the loop. Absolutely. So what this means is that once the ad network is fully set up, ads will start playing for some folks at the beginning of the show. And right now, right before the credits of the show. So we're trying not to interrupt any of the actual content of the episodes. So we're trying to do that and keep that in mind for everybody. For now, we have 2 ad slots in each of those places. I think they're 30 seconds each. So at most a minute interruption at those places. There also might be room for network ads at the very end of the show. So if you want to hear about other shows on the network, their show ads will randomly shovel into each episode once that is set up. So it'll be blurbs about the other shows recorded by the cast of those shows. Yeah, so in the past, we've kind of been tagging those on to the end of our episodes, and I'm sure you've heard them on all of the network shows. Because that's part of our network agreement. If you enjoyed this show, check out whatever. We will all kind of be reading our own now, and those will get slotted into that last spot. I believe the plan is also to use them potentially to announce like cool things that are happening on the network. Like if there are Twitch streams coming up, or if somebody on the network has a new game coming out, if James has another book, or Jeff and John have a book or something like that coming out, that kind of stuff will go in there too. So that's kind of fun. Yeah, we're definitely going to be playing around with it. So we'll see what we can do and what we can't do and try to make it as good of an experience as we can for everybody.
Mm-hmm. So we'll be playing around with those settings to ensure that it's the least intrusive experience. We know that like having ads and things, you know, it's nobody's favorite. But we do know that it'll really help support the things that we're doing. It'll help support the network. There are a few people on the network that do this as a job, so this will help support them too. And ideally in the future, it'll make it so that we can do some more cool things too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have blocked 63 different categories of ads so far that we just didn't feel good about advertising on the show. So things like military stuff. Ryan and I, for our personal reasons, blocked anything related to alcohol. We blocked things like weight loss, kind of anything that we felt might be triggering or problematic for anybody.
Yeah.
There are categories in there that are listed as other. So we don't know exactly what will be in there. If you come across something that you don't agree with or you don't feel like meets the standards of the network or the standards and values of our show, please let us know. The ad spots are individualized. So different people are getting different ads. Yeah. I can't remember the word for that. But so we don't necessarily, like, it's not like I can pull up the episode and hear the ad that you heard. So if you hear something that again, like I said, doesn't match the values that you think our show holds or even that you hold, please let us know. And we'll do what we can.
Yep, absolutely.
We don't know when ads will start filling in for folks because we're kind of still working out all the kinks and getting everything moved over. You might only get one ad out of the 4 spots available between the opener and that mid-roll right before the credits. You might get none. You might get all 4. It depends on what the algorithm decides, the almighty algorithm.
Exactly. But in addition to the ad stuff, we did end up losing a bit of accessibility in the move. If you get served an ad, the timestamps in the show notes are not going to be as accurate anymore. Which is really unfortunate. In addition, uploading episodes to Megaphone strips them of any chapter markers in the MP3 itself. So we've lost chaptering on services like Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts, which I'm very annoyed by, but there's literally no workaround for it. But services like Podcast Addict on Android will still have chaptering since they dynamically create chapters based on the show notes timestamps, which is really cool. Another thing that bummed me out as well is show notes now have a 4,000 character limit. I know Amelia's laughing at me.
I have been rolling my eyes at his frustration about this, dear listeners, because our show notes are so long.
They're
so long, and I know that
thorough.
They are thorough. But also it kind of makes it hard to find the information because you have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. And I know I know that they're in. Before you say it, I know that they have headers. I know that they're always in the same order. I know the information is always in the same place. However, if I am not the person that checks the show notes on every single episode, I don't remember exactly what that order is.
That's fair. To Amelia's delight, we are going to be streamlining the show notes quite a bit to make room for those 4,000 characters and make sure that we don't go over that limit in the future. If we happen to get a little too verbose in the introduction to the episode. So
I love, I think this is like the different versions of accessibility, right? Is that like for you, accessibility is like, I have all of the information at my fingertips. I have these timestamps so that I can get to where I want to go. And for me, I'm like, I have ADHD. Please just give me the information I need.
Yep.
I don't need all of this.
Yeah, so we'll figure it out.
We're going to find the balance between, as usual.
Yeah.
We are going to find the balance between the magical girl and the necromancer, between the fire and water. It's somewhere in there.
It's somewhere in there. Yeah,
and Megaphone is going to force us to find that spot.
I know, and that's fine. We also lost built-in transcripts on the episodes too, which I'm not too happy about, but that just means we need to find another place to host the transcribed episodes. So that way people can still get to them, even if it's just an easy link to click in the show notes. Who knows?
Yeah. We may just like have a link to where they are in our Dropbox, or potentially maybe eventually like host them on our website or something like that. So we'll find a way. Simplecast let us just like tack it in there as like an additional field so that we could put transcripts in, and unfortunately no luck on that one.
No.
So finally, the final note on all of this, patrons will still get ad-free episodes for all of the new content. We are looking at the possibility of having an ad-free feed of normal episodes for patrons. So that would be the episodes that have the cold open and this call to action and like the music and, you know, all that, like the full production. Right now, though, you can get access to ad-free episodes through those early release episodes. Anything that we put out in our feed that is an early release doesn't have those ads inserted yet, because it gets inserted when we put it into the main feed.
Yes.
So again, all of this is pretty new to us. We just kind of wanted to be upfront about what some of these changes are, because we really care about the quality of the show and everything in front of the scenes and behind the scenes, and we kind of like to let people know what's going on and how the sausage is made. What is nice is this, again, it'll help supplement our Patreon, gets us closer to affording to do this show without having to pay anything out of pocket. Ideally will help us be able to bring you new and interesting content too, because we'll have the funds to do some of that kind of stuff. We don't know what that is yet, but we can dream.
Exactly. One additional announcement, currently over on the One Shot Podcast Network Secret Archive, their $5 and up Patreon level, you can find the first episode of the new sci-fi fantasy adventure campaign starring James and Mel D'Amato, Drew Merzieski and Allie Grower. It's called Starwall, Odyssey of the Lucky Finn. It's fantastic. And I am editing the campaign with some truly inspired synth music, if I do say so myself. It is amazing. Fantastic. Oh, it's so good. Episode 0 is out now, with episode 1 proper right around the corner. So definitely check that out if you're a patron over there, or dip in there after a bit to grab those episodes, because goodness gracious, hilarious.
And consider becoming a patron if you're not, just to get access to this whole other show.
It's so good. It's so good. I can't wait to edit more of it. And
like they all like have such good chemistry. I played a game of Descent into Midnight with James, Mel, Allie, and Drew back at 2018 Gen Con, and it was such a fantastic experience. Rich Howard was running the game for us. Like,
wow.
I know. I know published author TV's James D'Amato personally.
I am thoroughly jealous of that table. My Lord.
Speaking of Patreon, in addition to bonus episodes that won't appear anywhere else, at the $5 and up level for our Patreon, I guess we should clarify, this is for ours now, as well as bonus outtakes and our new character creation chit chat segments that we put out for all of our patrons. Not to mention exclusive chat rooms in the C3 Discord. We would like to take just a moment to thank our current patrons for helping to support everything that we're doing here.
Absolutely. First up, and first patron, Lieutenant, thank you.
David, aka Tigranosaurus, thank you so much for your support.
Eric Bonts, we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Matt Newton, thanks.
Shadim Kabal, we're happy to have you here with us. Thank you.
Daryl Holiday II, you rock. Thank you so much.
We appreciate your support. The Shyest Barbarian, thank you.
And honestly, thank you for that excellent Animorphs meme.
So good.
It won't be last night by the time this comes out, but it made my day, and I cackled very loudly. Benjamin Sweeney, thank you so much for your support.
Many thanks to Lorcan McInnes.
Rob Fletcher, we appreciate your support so much. Thank you.
And we appreciate your support, Kevin Brown. Thank you.
And we are glad to have you, Tentacle Duck. Oh, God, such a good name still. I'm going to say that every time, Tentacle Duck. Thank you for supporting us.
And thank you to all of our future patrons. We couldn't make this show as easily without your assistance, and we are really grateful to have you here with us.
That is, regrettably, truly regrettably, all we have for today. No reviews to read. If you do end up wanting to brighten our day or give me an early birthday present, you can review, and if you want your review read right here, you can stop by Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict and leave a 5-star review. We really do appreciate everyone that comes our way. For now, though, relax those shoulders, take some deep breaths, drink some water, enjoy something spooky if you're into that, and keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time.
Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter at CreationCast or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permissions from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero, remixed by Steve Combs, and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used in today's guest can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, extra outtakes, and much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.
Nailed it.
Huzzah.
There we go.
I did it so good.
I've got too many background bumpies. I gotta fix that. All language.
I'm trying to be good. We've reached the part where we're going to have to force you to name a person.
Oh, yeah, I know. While I was out there, I grabbed my books, which are used for two things in this house: me naming characters and my daughter naming her dolls.
All right, so we can stop this recording here and save it on.
Nailed it.
Yep.
I also realized I've not been sitting very close to the microphone this entire time because
I've been able to hear you just fine.
Okay.
Theoretically.
You can fix that later.
Theoretically, yes, I can.
Yeah.
I'll leave that up to you.
Okay. Don't worry about it. I got you.
I have like a sweet spot that I have to put the mic in, so because I've got like one of those line mics where it's like, it's about arm's length at the specific angle to prevent peaking.
Yeah, mine is just like hanging out over my monitor, coming down here.
You got that sweet.
Everybody at
now.
work on my work calls is always like, "How come you sound so clear?" And I'm like, "Because I'm a professional."
Listen,
the rest of you are calling in on your cell phones.
Get into podcasting. It'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
We did it.
Woo!